Hello. 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 Okay. Cool. Okay. Great. Amazing. Wonderful. Okay. Good. So that's funny. I was just saying how if you couldn't hear me, you couldn't hear me because you wouldn't be able to hear me. But hello, welcome. Yes, good catch right there. I'm gonna start this over. Good one, everyone. Hello, welcome. Yes, that is my fault. I didn't realize. Good work. Thank you. Okay, cool. Kind of just click through everything real quick, but yeah. So what I was saying was, welcome to Cybersecurity 101, building a foundation for digital protection. This is our Global Hack Week, and we're focusing on security this weekend. This week. But yeah, we're going to be covering some more fundamentals in security and really how you can protect yourself in this pending digital landscape. But what I was saying was that I do have a slide deck prepared, but we probably won't follow the slide exactly because I did want to make a few tweets to the last time I did kind of cover introduction to Cybersecurity 101. So we're going to start with following the slide deck. There might be points and times where we bridge away from the slide deck, and then we'll come back and get back online, back on track later down the line. With that being said, if you have not yet, let's make sure everyone checks in. I'm so glad everyone can hear me now. I have dropped the check-in link for today's session right into chat. And again, if you feel free to have any question, feel free to stop me at any time, and I'll be more than glad and happy to answer them. I just drop asking anything in the chat. Actually, start with make sure to check in. After that, we'll get started with asking anything in chat. Okay, so let's go through our original. So real quick, hey, I am Kev. So I'm a coach with Major League Hacking. I use the he, him, his pronouns. I do a lot of different things. So I generally like to say, feel free to really talk about anything. And one of the things that I do is security or work in the realm of cybersecurity. Schedule overview. This is not exactly what we're gonna do because I'm straying away from this a bit. First thing we're gonna do is cover introduction to cybersecurity, and then we're gonna do is which will in the same time cover understanding common cybersecurity threats, including tactics that happens a lot, as well as some example of real life cybersecurity attacks and what their impacts are. So this is not 100% accurate. After that, we will be doing securing your own personal devices, so personal security as well as networks. We'll be talking over a few different things, such as what makes the password strong, multi-factor authentication. I was going to be talking about best etiquette in terms of safe web browsing. Also about how to be safe with email. And then last but not least, we're going to talk a bit about some other things if we have time, maybe like social engineering and so on and so forth. But yeah, this is like an outdated schedule. But I do like some of the stuff that I had here. We're not going to go exactly word for what's on the screen. The first thing we're going to do is define what the term cybersecurity means, right? So I pulled a few definitions here from different sources. So for example, Microsoft defines cybersecurity. These are quotes from their website. Cybersecurity is a set of processes, best practices, and technology solutions that help protect your critical systems and networks from digital attacks. If you actually, I don't know if everyone has seen recently, there's been a bit of, I think it's like office outage. So there's been a bit of office outages recently, and we're not sure the causes, if it has to do with maybe a cybersecurity thing, if it is just solely, some update things. But actually, let me see if I can pull this up. I was looking at this earlier today. But yeah, that is what, if you look at down detector, that's one of the great ways of determining how the service is working, if it's a cyber attack, so on and so forth. And then here's IBM's definition. So cybersecurity is the practice of protecting critical systems and sensitive information from digital attack. You can see that between the two definitions, we share the word digital attack. If you can imagine, digital attack is any sort of attack that happens across the system. And I personally think that to cybersecurity, there's also a level of physical security, but we'll go into that a bit later. That it kind of breaks apart from cybersecurity. It is still in a way part of the actual physical security of cyber devices, but we'll cover that in a bit. And then our last one is from one of our huge, most well-known networking companies out here, which is Cisco, but a successful cybersecurity approach has multiple layers of protection spread across the computers, networks, programs, or data that one intends to keep safe. In an organization, the people, processes, and technology must all complement one another to create effective defense from cyber attacks. The keyword here is all three of them shares in terms of cybersecurity is the idea of protection from attacks, from digital attacks / cyber attacks. It talks about the combination of policies, best practices, processes, and technology solutions across multiple different things, right? So the people that use the computers, the people that use the networks, people who write the programs, for them to all come together to determine cybersecurity. Actually, that reminds me, I forgot because of being muted, but let me throw in some background music for everyone as we talk about these topics. I don't like that. Let me go with this one. Okay, cool. Okay, let's continue. So I think when I wrote this, I did not write. Okay, so yeah, okay, so let's go over a few things in Paint because I don't want to cover this real quick. So we're gonna hop over to our trusty friend Paint, and this is where we're actually gonna go over things until that are not exactly according to the slide deck. But yeah, so what we're talking about right now is instruction things. So overall about cybersecurity concept, right? So in general, in cybersecurity, how this whole entire concept works, if you think about it, we're going to go over a really brief understanding of what it kind of looks like. So here is how you can think about it. So we can cut this and let's say not really halves, but let's draw this box. Well, I'm going to cut the screen in half. What you can think about this is your firewall. Well, I hope you have a firewall. And what that sits is this generally sits either within your router or really close or adjacent to your router. So you can think of it like this, right? So this part, let's say, is your router. And how this works is you can think of this as the outside world. Writing in Ping is not fun. And you can think of this as your inside world, or just, let's say, your network. So this is your network. Well, how this normally kind of looks for your average day user, right? So like for me, for you, and some people might have a bit more advanced if you know what you're doing system at home. But what in the same case is your router, this was a firewall built in, also dubs as what we call an access point. I can't spell. If I spell something wrong, just ignore it. Listen to why I say don't read what I spell sometimes. You can let me know if I spell something wrong. But what an access point is, this is what Wi-Fi is running out of. So this is what provides Wi-Fi. And generally, if you did not know, is that our home routers are generally not just a router. They're generally a home router that has a part of a half of a switch built into it, that generally have firewall built into it, that has an access point built into it. It's just so there's one key piece of equipment that really does all your kind of home network needs at once, right? And like with that being said, if you look at your home router, generally, you have a few like RJ45 jacks for Ethernet ports. And here, right, so this is your switch part of it. And you can think of this as the barrier between the inside world, the outside world and your network. And there's multiple ways to connect to this through the router, right? So I should probably have flipped this, but that's okay. We kind of get the idea. This is like one object. And so inside your network, you might have things such as your personal cell phone. Pardon my poor drawing. It is not my strong suit. So, okay, that just made it worse. Here, let's grab the box feature. There we go. So we have our cell phone. And then within the cell phone, we can get like the circular feature, right? There we go. And then we can make this, oops. And this will be, oh, I forgot. After you unselect, you cannot modify anymore. I'm trying to get the, how do I grab this and move it? Oh, well, I'll just put it right here. There we go. Oh, that's not good. Let's start here. Give it like a circle. There we go. So, all right, there's your cell phone. And your cell phone is generally connected to the network through our Wi-Fi, right? So you can think of here is the outside world. Here's your internal network, and this is connected to your router generally through Wi-Fi. I'm going to draw this three things, right? It's always connected. Then maybe you have, let's say, a laptop. This is Art 101. Welcome to Art 101, where we attempt to draw things. So let's call this a laptop. There we go. The good thing about tech is a lot of things is like squares and circles, so that helps a tad bit. But I get a diagonal? I don't think so. But let's imagine this being like a laptop, and then maybe you have a desktop. And for desktop, I'm just gonna draw a huge square like this. You can imagine this being the full-fledged desktop. I guess I'll be a tad fancy and like give you this, so maybe hopefully this helps a bit, right? So this is your desktop. You got your desktop in 3D. And generally, your laptop would also be connected through like the access point on your router, so we get some Wi-Fi in there. And then your desktop. Nah, it does not, but I do appreciate that. I do appreciate that. I don't know about it being good, but it is there. It would generally be, let's say, hook your desktop, if it has a NIC, which stands for network interface card, it can be hooked up directly through through Ethernet cord. It also has a wireless NIC, which is just a wireless network interface card. This is what essentially gets a Wi-Fi. But if it doesn't have a wireless version, you might just have a Ethernet cable, which is also known as the RJ45 cable, that hooks up to the switch. And this is kind of your barrier between the inside and outside world. And the reason we're talking about this is like your home setup. And this is what it generally looks like. So because of how far we have developed in security, I don't know about that one. I bet with your profile picture, you can do so much better than I can. But that aside. So here is generally what your network will look like, and this is what the outside would look like. And what this would be is then you have actors. So we generally call them in cybersecurity. I definitely try to draw a box when I was not in box mode, but we call them threat actors. Actors or attackers. And they're generally living on what we like to call the cloud, right? Which is just the internet, really. And what they're going to try to do is connect to you through the internet, which is connected to your router. So the threat actor or the attackers generally live in the internet or in the cloud. And they're going to try to, from there, connect to your router, because this is what allows your router to also reach different services, such as like YouTube or Google. And what they're going to try to do is be able to get through your router and then get into one of your devices and then cause damage from there. This is generally something you generally have to worry about a bit less, because most I can't say this word. Holy heck. Sophisticated. That took a bit of sounding out. Most sophisticated actors or attackers won't generally target individuals, but you do have some, because we'll go over the different types of cybersecurity threats and the common one, and we'll go over which ones you might be more prone to attack. But this is generally what the whole entire system looks like, right? You have your devices that are communicating out through your router, and your router then hooks up to the internet, and the threat actors or attackers are going to try to get through your router to your inside devices and attack you through that way. And the key thing here is you can see that one of your first line of defense in any situation is this router. And which you know that router has what we call firewall and so on and so forth. When we go over some terminology, this is really to give you an idea of what internal home network will kind of look like and what type of threats you might be facing in your personal life. Well, let's clear that and let's get back to some of our slides. So common cyber threats. So what are some of the common cyber threats that we face in this landscape? We face something what we call malware, which is actually one of the most broadest designation of it's one of the broadest designation of a type of threat, and we're going to go over why. We have ransomware, which is actually just a type of malware. We have phishing, social engineering, insider threat. I'm going to add a few words here and there as we cover some of this because this is a bit outdated. This is from like when I first ever went and taught Cybersecurity 101 type of course. We have distributed denial of service attack, or even just denial of service attack. We have advanced persistent threat, which is just a really idea of a type of actor and what their goal is and what they're trying to do. Some of this might not apply to the individual level or the personal level, but these are all real world things we see, especially against corporations or at a more high profile target level. Then we have man in the middle attack. So the first thing, let's see what we have. So the first thing we talk about is malware. We're going to not read the whole thing from Microsoft, or we might in a second. But malware essentially is just the idea of called malicious software. We just took malicious and we took software, which is the first three letter, and then we took the rest of took soft out of there, and we just call it malware. And this is generally, some people have the misconception that malware is a subcategory of essentially malicious software, but it's not. Malware is the broadest category of malicious software. Some people get malware and virus confused, and we're going to go over the difference between malware and virus. But before we even do any of that, it's the general understanding of that malware is the broadest category of malicious software and is generally a catch-all term for all malicious software, including worms, ransomware, spyware, and viruses. And each of these that are differentiate is we essentially created families. And you can think of this as how kind of like species are organized, right? We're all mammals, but in mammals we have subcategories or subspecies. It's kind of what we did with malicious software or malware. We categorize them by their type of attack vector, or let's say how they go about doing their attack, or how do they get into the system, or what do they generally do, right? So one of the more common ones that most people know about is ransomware. And we all know ransomware because the malicious software subcategory of ransomware, the idea of that is that it will take over your computer, encrypt everything, and then ransom you for money. It's like kidnapping your computer, just like if you were to be kidnapped in real life. We're going to read a bit of this Microsoft things. I don't know why I put the whole thing here, but it's okay. It is designed to cause harm to computers or networks by altering or deleting files, extracting sensitive data like passwords and account numbers, or sending malicious emails or traffic. Malware may be installed by an attacker who gain access to the network, but often individuals unwillingly deploy malware on their devices or company network after clicking a bad link or downloading an infected attachment. I now remember why I threw this in here. This is a really good definition. It covers a few things. We already talked a bit about how malware is a catch-all term for any sort of malicious software, which in reality, you can write malware really simply. Like if you write a program that wipes someone's computer, you technicality-wise a really basic malware. Some people might be called a script. Could be true, but the idea of malware is just any type of software that is malicious. So you can technically, I can write a simple malware that it just maybe grabs data. And malicious doesn't mean just, let's say, causing damage to network. It can also exfiltrate data, right? So I can write a malicious software or a simple program. What it does is maybe it will run a few commands locally on your computer and then sends it over to an endpoint somewhere in the cloud, and so on and so forth. And then that's one of the key things here. Another key things about is that it says it's designed to cause harm by not only damaging, it also includes alternating, deleting, extracting data such as password, account number, or anything like that. Any to that personal or even just any general identifiable data. It also talks about here, which is really important in understanding malware, is that it doesn't have to be solely installed by the attacker, right? I don't have to install it. What I can do is online, I can have a website that I designed that maybe allows you to download free movies, and you think you're getting a deal out of it, but what you're actually are getting is free movie plus some malicious software that came with the movie, right? Malware can come in multiple forms. You can hide malware in PDF files. You can hide malware in Word files, and this is why if you ever notice is when you open a Word file, they generally open in protected view, right? That is Microsoft's way of trying to limit the amount of malicious code or malicious software that can be bundled together with, let's say, a Word file and so on and so forth. Cool. So let's discuss one of the type of malware we talked a bit about, which is ransomware. Ransomware is one of the most common type of malware, and it's generally used to lock down files, data, or systems, and then the people generally threaten to erase or destroy that data. Sometimes they also threaten to sell that data to the public, and this is a way for them to make money, and they're generally this threat is like, oh, until you pay it, we will be selling this data, XYZ. And then recent ransomware attack have generally targeted state or local government or organization that under huge pressure might be more likely to try to pay that ransom. On this in ransomware, the idea of ransomware is as scary as the lack of cybersecurity you have within your system. This is ransomware generally not something that the individual has to be worried about because it's not worth a attacker or threat actor's agenda to attack each person individually and try to ransom money. Because one, most of us are not that wealthy. I say most of us. So if you're maybe a high profile target, it's different. Even though you're not a corporation, like maybe if you attack Elon Musk's personal computer or like Bill Gates or some really wealthy people, it's a different story. But the ransomware is not something we have to be worried personally on a day-to-day basis. And what we're really looking at is the effect of ransomware on larger organizations and corporations, or local places, right? Such as like maybe a hospital. Hospitals are not amazing because the second they get ransomware, you have life in danger. They have more accountability and risk involved that they might want to pay these ransom. And if you don't know, hospitals actually, another reason why hospital is one of the most favorite places for ransomware attackers where people who use ransomware is because what we have in hospitals a lot of time what we call legacy systems, where they're older systems that were designed to maybe keep one function running, right? So a lot of medical equipment are made once and they're never kept up to date. And the reason for that is generally it's really expensive. And once they wrote the money, they don't need really a reason to keep it up to date, right? So it's unlike maybe like Windows, our operating system, which Microsoft updates continuously. So there's a lot of time what we call zero-day vulnerabilities. And the idea of a zero-day vulnerability is just a vulnerability that is discovered prior to there being a patch for, and even with those, they're working on continuous fixing. With hospitals and legacy systems, you might have written, let's say, I might have written a program for, let's say, an X-ray machine, and no one's ever updating it. As long as it works, they will keep it in service, and that program might be running on Windows XP. I don't know if you've been to a doctor's office and maybe see a doctor's like note-taking software and you go, that's super old. And you can see, and this is one of the reasons why hospital is really high on the ransomware attack list. And another key thing to note here is that you're trusting them is why ransomware is actually really dangerous in the sense that not only generally when they ransom you, they generally make encrypted data, they generally make a copy of data, they generally exfiltrate that data. That means they take it from you, they make a copy, they steal it from you, and you have to trust that the person who is ransomware, someone who is a criminal, will, one, if you pay the ransom, restore the data. Two, if you pay the ransom, delete that data. Three, if you pay the ransom, sell that data, right? what is holding a criminal to their word? Really, nothing. So ransomware, generally, we want to make sure just we have multiple systems in place. If you are a corporation, if you are anything that are bigger than an individual, that keeps one, try to prevent a ransomware, which are tactics and ways of doing so. Two, have good cybersecurity measures to prevent users from maybe causing a ransomware actor to be able to access your network. Three, is to have proper backup of your data and having contingency plans for you to come back online and become functional in case you have a ransom. Four, encrypting your data. So even if they take a copy of your data without certain things, it's really useless. And if they encrypt your system, you have a way to back up and restore and recover. And four, just never really trust, right? If you encrypt data, they can't sell your data and so on and so forth. But that is the idea of ransomware on a really high level view. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Let's go look at something else. Oh, I guess I have another definition. Doesn't really matter. So the next idea, this is what is a lot more common and a lot more applying to a personal level, is we have the idea of phishing. And phishing essentially is a form of social engineering that tries to trick the user into providing their own personal identifiable information or sensitive information to them. So phishing scams can occur as emails or text messages that appear to be a legitimate company asking for sensitive information, such as a credit card data, login information, so on and so forth. The FBI has noted blah, blah, blah during pandemic surge of phishing. So we do have a few different versions of phishing. Phishing is the one that everyone generally know. We also have something called vishing. Vishing is essentially just the voice form of phishing. I think we have something called smishing, which is just the texting version of phishing and so on and so forth. So we have different forms. But the general idea essentially is a way of social engineering that tries to gain your trust, and from you extract information that are beneficial to attackers. And you can think of this is one of the most common types of attacks and ones you probably come across the most often. And these are the emails that you get that look a bit strange, right? These are also the text message that you get. These might be phishing, might be when they, let's say, call your company and go, or call your phone and go, hey, you want to sign up for XYZ? And their whole goal is trying to take information from you. There's also the type of phishing where they might try to pretend to be a common login, right? These happen a lot. Have you ever order something on the web and the second you get an email being, hey, someone else, did you order more stuff, right? So I think I've seen these, and I unfortunately do think some of our online vendors might sell our information to a degree. Excuse me, sorry. Because this happened to me before where if you don't know, PayPal is a type of payment service where I have paid something on PayPal, right? I just got a new mechanical keyboard. I got on the website, paid off PayPal, and then later I got a phishing email from PayPal that tried to access PayPal. Hey, did you make a purchase of $1,000 with XYZ? If you didn't, please make sure to contact us. And generally, with a level of phishing, they try to bring in a level of urgency, right? Oh, please contact us now, or else you're going to get XYZ. You're going to get fined, where you're going to be charged this, where did you just buy this? And the whole point is trying to get you to not think. And because of the level of urgency, to hop on and just do things. It is actually one of the easiest things to be vigilant of, because it's just really common tactics and it's really similar, right? So the whole idea is to extract from you. So whenever you feel like you're being rushed to do something, and they're trying to ask you for certain information or logging in, or if you're reading an email that just doesn't seem right, it could be spelling errors. And being honest with you, identifying phishing through a spelling error has become a lot harder than before. And this is really solely because our attackers or our threat actors have upped their game and know that that's one of the most highest giveaway of phishing attack. And the part which I don't know if I have any more on is I do have stuff. So a bit of something is phishing is not the only type of social engineering. Social engineering is just the general idea of gaining someone's trust and then from there being able to do things, right? I hate to say this, but sometimes social engineering, it can be used on you, it be used on other people, and this is pretty common, right? So we do have, generally most places have systems in place, and this is why some people tell you that you really shouldn't let strangers know your birthday, because your birthday is one of generally the key things people will use to identify it's you. And if someone knows your birthday and know your name, I can easily act like you. And this is an idea of covering social engineering here during as part of like building a foundation to digital protection is next time when you're about to put your birthday into something, maybe think of a common fake one you might want to use, and so on and so forth, right? And for example, is let's say I can call your phone company, right? So I'm gonna look at chat. Let's call. Okay, no one has names I can pronounce, but let's say I'm gonna it looks like data. I'm gonna I don't know. I'm gonna make up a name actually. So let's say Kyle, right? Kyle, you're from chat. And I know your name is Kyle. I happen to check your social media, found out your birthday is January 31st, which I don't know if it actually exists. I think there are 31. I could be wrong. So I know your birthday is January 31st. I now also know, so I'm going to come back to this, right? So, I'm going to clear this page. Oopsie daisy. That was not clearing the page. Where's my mouse? Oh, here it is. I'm gonna close this page. So let's say I know your name is Kyle. I think I said Kyle earlier. KY, definitely can't spell. KYLE. Let's say now I know your birthday is 1/31st. I don't even need to know the year most of the time. And then maybe let's say I know I took a look around some of your pictures. I reversed engineer a bit of maybe where you live, right? So let's say if you don't know, this is something you really should do, is you're taking photos and posting online, is making sure your location data, your geo information, your geotag is not in your photos. Let's say throw a photo, I got approximately where you live. And let's say it's Northrop, PA, Pennsylvania. I don't know why. I don't think this is a real place. I hope it's not a real place. What I can do with this information is then pretend to be you, right? I can use social engineering, and maybe I'm not attacking you. I did some reconnaissance, got some data of yours. I can call up your phone company, or I can call up maybe your credit card company, or your maybe electric bill, and try to learn some more information about you, right? And with a level of confidence, and people say this, fake it till you make it. And the reason that saying exists because with a certain level of confidence, people are more inclined to believe you and call and be like, hey, yeah, my name is Kyle. I'm calling to just trying to get some information about my historical BGE bills or my historical XYZ bills, right? So like, so there's a gas company, the one that in my area, some of them called BGE. They're called like PGE, GGE. So like something gas and electric. So like XYZ. So this would be like PGE, right? I'm calling from a PGE bill. Yeah, my birthday is January 31st, and that's generally a key indicator they would use. Oh yeah, I'm located in Northrop, PA, and there's no other way to identify you, and giving that information out can be vulnerable. And this is why people say don't put your birthday into your username for things, don't do XYZ, and the reason for that does exist. So that's the idea of phishing and thing. And actually, one of the biggest things, if you talk to anyone who's in cybersecurity, is insider threat. And the reason why insider threat is one of the most scariest thing is because you take a lot of what we kind of drew, right? We had that firewall. You can think of it as a physical wall, right? That keeps us protected from the outside world. The thing of insider threat, they're already in your network. They already kind of know everything. And this really doesn't apply on a personal level. I guess it could technically apply on a personal level, right? If you let one of your friends onto your home network, onto your Wi-Fi, and they for some reason has an agenda against you, they can attack you from the inside. And the idea of insider threat, here's a definition from IBM, which is current or former employees, business partners, contractors, anyone who has had access to the system or network in the past can be considered insider threat, right? They don't have to be existing within now. They could have been they only have to have access to network or system one in some point in the past, and they're allowed to abuse their permission, whether maybe you gave them the ability to do something, right? So I can give my friend the ability to use my Wi-Fi because they want to surf the web, but they can turn that into something else and use that to attack or allow attackers to be able to infiltrate my network from the inside. And the reason why insider threat is so dangerous is really this last line, right? Insider threat can be invisible to traditional systems, so security solutions like firewalls, intrusion detection system, because those are generally with the idea that you're outside and you're trying to break in, right? And a good analogy of this would be, for example, if someone's already inside your house and they came in perfectly fine, right? Let's say they have a key, they open your house door and they're hiding inside your house. When you get home, you're not going to notice anything suspicious, right? Because I already know, let's say you have a security system, right? You can think of this as the physical house. So would be kind of like what the translation kind of looks like, right? So we can break this down. So this is what it kind of looks like. So let's cut this in half. And let's say this is your home. And as in like this is your physical home. And this is, let's say, your network, right? So we're making an analogy between the two. So in your home, you have maybe, at least most have some sort of alarm. I can't spell alarm / security system. I'm just going to be S system, right? And the equivalent to this on a network would be like firewall. I definitely can't spell because fire is definitely not spelled fall. So we have like firewall and / antivirus, right? So this is like your equivalency. And this is security system. You have, let's say, your door, right? Well, I guess we can break this out actually. So antivirus would be like your let's move a few things around. This is a few good things about ping as I can do this. So let's say we have your door is like your firewall. After your firewall, you have like your antivirus or security system, and you'll see why we make this analogy in a second, right? So if I was coming home and I got home, and someone who's an insider threat, that means someone who initially had access to my house. So maybe this is a odd one. I'm gonna use this because this is probably the most personal thing. So let's say you had a girlfriend or boyfriend that had access to your house before that. You gave them a copy of keys. You were living together. Don't question this. So maybe your ex boyfriend or girlfriend had access, and they, let's say, had a key. They got through. They can get through the door. They knew the password to your alarm. They can disarm your alarm, and let's say they're waiting inside. In this scenario, if I come home, I check my door is locked. I don't suspect anything. There's no sign of forced entry. There's nothing along those lines. I'll be able to get through there. The alarm system is enabled or disabled properly. Nothing is there. I would get in, and I would know no wiser that someone else is within my home. And that applies the same thing in the network, right? If you had an employee or a friend who has access to a network, that means they bypass the firewall because they don't have to break in. They bypass antivirus, which generally we can act like security, right? Because they can, let's say, maybe they added things to certain sort of like exemption lists and so on and so forth. And the same ideology, right? The reason is there's no sign of forced entry. There's no log that says someone tried to break in. There's nothing that triggered the security system. They knew they used to have access, so my computer is not yelling that they're writing a program on the computer, and so on and so forth. So it's like kind of like an analogy between how insider threat is our biggest concern. Is they're a lot harder to detect because I can't just say, oh, they broke down my door. They are on my system and they're writing a program, because they could have had those permission prior, and it's a lot harder to detect something from common day-to-day user usage of the network or of the technology, right? Let's go back to our slide deck. Okay, cool. So we talked about insider threat, blah, blah, blah. Denial of service attack. The whole idea of denial of service attack essentially is coordinated attacks to overload traffic. If you don't know, you can think of I'm just going to explain this really briefly, is you can think of your Wi-Fi or your network or your home network, or any network really, as a highway, right? Well, based off of your hardware specification, this highway might be of different size, right? So like if we're in, like, say, a rural area, your highway might be 1 lane. Or you think of it as road. Don't even think of it as highway. I use highway as any type of road, right? Highways is a subsection of roads, right? So instead of a 1-lane road, if you have a stronger network, you might have a 6-lane road or a highway. And the whole idea of a denial of service attack is you stuff so much cars on those roads, that it becomes so slow and you go nowhere. So on a 1-way road, right? If I stick 100 cars in the same 1-way road, you're moving really slowly, right? On a 2-lane road, that becomes better, right? It's 50 cars per lane. 3-lane roads, keep doing the math. And the whole idea of denial of service attack essentially is you can leave a network as a road, and that, or as a road that's a certain number of lanes, and that is generally what we call your network's bandwidth. It's how much traffic you can handle. So if my network is a 3-lane network or 3-lane road, that is an ideology of our network, we can only hold so much. And the whole point of denial of service is you keep making requests, or you keep generating traffic for that network till that network can no longer respond because everything is jammed up. We're in a what do you call it? It's not a car accident, not a car jam. What do you call it? We're stuck in traffic. We created traffic. So much traffic that we're stuck in traffic, that we can't go anywhere. And that's the idea of a denial of service attack, is that I will overwhelm your network or overwhelm things with simple things that your network is no longer able to respond because your computer is not generally programmed to a way that only responds to certain things, right? It's like, if I'm a person, you have to think of this person, right? If I'm a person, you ask me to do something, if I always have to do it, if you keep asking me and I have so much stuff I do, I get nothing done. And that's the whole idea, right? Is like, if let's say you're working somewhere as an intern or so on and so forth, and your boss asks you to do one thing and someone else asks you to do something else, and people just keep asking you to do things, and you're just taking requests and you're unable to do anything. And the whole part of where you get, instead of just DOS with denial of service attack, you get distributed denial of service attack with DDoS, is that the idea of using a whole network. And this is where things like botnet comes in on. The idea of botnet is someone might put malicious software on your computer, and their goal is not to, let's say, hurt your computer at that key moment, is to join your computer into a botnet, which is I might drop a malicious software on your computer, and have it stay dormant on your computer and create a botnet, which means this file is on multiple computer across the world. And the whole idea of this is that I now have a wave, or army of computer that I can use to do attacks such as denial of service, or distribute denial of service, where I can have your computer, maybe I put a malware file on everyone in chat. I create a botnet of my computer plus everyone in chat, and I can use that to attack a network and cause a distributed denial of service attack. This is really just a key word in the attacker space, which is also called APT, or Advanced Persistent Threat. And the APT, or Advanced Persistent Threat, essentially is an intruder or group of intruders that infiltrate a system and try to remain undetected over an extended period of time. And during this time, the intruder generally tries to leave the networking system intact so they can spy on the business or activity, show information, and while avoiding getting detected. And one of the key example of this would be, like, if you don't know, I've heard of the solar wind breaches of the United States government and so on and so forth. And that was example of an advanced persistent threat. And we have something called APT groups. And these are generally groups who common do this. And you see this a lot more in business. It's also something you can worry about less because most of the time you don't have actors trying to spend a lot of time monitoring you and what you do. Given that you're not a high value enough target to do so. You can also think of this as kind of like the bigger boy version of a Trojan, right? You can get infected with Trojan. That does happen. And what that is essentially is like a program that acts like something else that disguises. They maybe get onto your computer, and then they would just sit there and like try to monitor your computer. You never know any wiser. They don't do anything because all they're trying to do is steal your data and exfiltrate the data for their usage. And that could be trying to maybe steal your banking data. That might be trying to steal your things, and they're trying to look for a gang in you. And for you, it might not be necessarily to sell your data, but it's to wait for the time. Maybe you log into something like your investment account. You log into your bank information, and they'll be able to take that and make a profit from that. Next slide. Man in the middle attack. Really quick. Man in the middle, as it sounds like, it's putting a man in the middle, which also eavesdropping attack. And this is generally how cybercriminal might sit in between two party of things and try to intercept and relay messages between two parties. And this would be an example for maybe me in chat, right? And a good example is like me streaming. A man in the middle attack, maybe I'm currently sending video footage from where I'm sitting to Twitch, and then Twitch is then sending it to you. Or if you're on YouTube, Facebook, wherever floats your boat. and someone can sit in the middle. And maybe when I set my video up, they can minimum comments, they will sit in the middle because I'm like maybe they should go with Twitch. So now I'm sending it to maybe a hostile entity, and that's how I can maybe modify maybe my video while I have on screen, and then before then send it out. That's really just the idea. Just once it's in the middle and modify things. We're gonna not get into the issues of ethical issues. I don't want to cover that this time. What we're actually gonna do is I'm gonna check out the rest of the slides real quick to see where I want to hop to. Actually, no, we're gonna go back to our whiteboard and we're gonna do the rest through our whiteboard. So we kind of now understand a bit of common cyber threats that exist for us as users and so on and so forth. Let's examine a bit of ways and let's apply some of this knowledge we just gained and how to better protect ourselves, right? So, well, we're going to explore, actually, I might have slides for this because I think I did write a bit of personal slide last time. I do need to update this to be more helpful. Oh, not that. No, never. Whoa, this is all ethics stuff. Is it this? Okay, so personal security. As what I want to talk about is how can you really protect yourself. So best practices for securing your computer, smartphone, and other things, right? So one of the first thing we can start off with is that I hope everyone has heard of this, is passwords, right? And what about passwords? And the idea here is having strong password. And the idea why we say strong password, and this definition of strong password has changed throughout time. And the reason is because as our own technology progresses, you can see how our phones are getting powerful, our computers are getting more powerful. And as these technology slowly start to advance and progress, what that also means is the capabilities of our attackers also progress. And maybe a strong password in the past might have been, let's say, 4 characters long, and like having at least uppercase and lowercase letter, right? That might have been strong in the past because our processing power attacker might not be able to crack that as easily. And cracking a password, all that just generally entails is that it's trying multiple password really quickly, right? You might think that like if I sit here and try to type out a lot of password, it's really insignificant or really hard. But for attacker, it will be a lot easier because they automate that, right? All they do is they have a program or software that is able to run through a lot of password to check and make sure stronger. And that's why our passwords are not changing, because as technology evolves, it becomes a lot easier to do. So something like this, maybe you used to take a software, like maybe 30 years to crack, which is, pretty strong. Might now only take a software a day to crack. And that's why we have new strong standard. And our current kind of standard where at least what I call is at least strong enough for having a good password is it being at least 12 characters in length, at least 12. You can probably get away with 8. So I'm gonna put 8 is probably okay, but I personally recommend at least 12. All my passwords are at least higher than 12 characters. Realistically, being honest here, having a mix of numbers, special characters. I'm gonna put SPC. Everyone knows what I'm talking about. Uppercase letters, lowercase letters, is having a mix of all of these. Having 1 or 2 is not enough. You really need a mix of all of these because you're then expanding essentially the possibility of what it is, right? If I always just only use lowercase letter, that lowers the possibility or the way of ordering things, and it makes it easy to be cracked or for attackers to their advantage. Another thing about password is as long as you meet these 2 criteria, they're generally good. Is don't use words in it. When we say this, people get confused. Don't use words in your password is different than don't use. Is different than a pass phrase is different. Pass phrases are generally multiple random words that you use as a password. Well, when we say don't use word in your password, is don't use the word password in your password, right? Don't do 123 password or 123 summer. Something that's really common is when we say word. There is another thing I recommend is if you use using a passphrase as your password, right? You pick a few words that maybe you will always remember that other people won't. For example, this is not my passphrase, but if I was to make one, right? Maybe I like security, so I put security as a word in my passphrase. I work at Major League Hacking. I put major in my passphrase. I'm teaching. I do a lot of Gold Hack Week streams, so maybe stream. So maybe I make a password that's like security. This is not a good one, but because it's kind of themed. But security major, stream. I like the color blue. Blue security major stream. I like the winter blue security major stream. I like like around 5 words that have nothing in common. That was a bad one because there's a few things that definitely have in common, but that's the idea of a passphrase, and that's so strong. And the really final thing, outside of having a strong password, even if you have a weak password, that's really important is just having different password across the board. And what can help with that, in terms of a personal security level, is having a password manager. Popular password manager are what I love is called Bitwarden. This is an open source password manager. It's great. If you want other ones, there's definitely other ones like KeyPass. This is a password manager. And there's also ones that are like more than one. I forgot what it's called. Though there was one like 1Pass or whatever, right? And the idea of a password manager, for those people who don't know, is essentially is you just remember one strong password for one thing for a software, and that software will encrypt the rest of your password and manage them for you. And that way you can have unique password for thing. And if you ever need to log into something, you just need to know that one password is the password manager, and the password manager will have everything else it needs to log into anything else you need. And this way you can always have unique strong passwords because you don't have to be in charge of memorizing them. If you don't want to use a password manager, just remember to keep to these key things, which is having different passwords across the board from everywhere, at least 8 to 12 characters of length, at least a mixture of uppercase, lowercase, numbers, as well as special characters, or you can use a passphrase. If you have a password manager, that's all you really need. Check out things such as Bitwarden, 1Pass, and KeyPass. And these are really all your things about password. And one of the biggest thing people get generally, I don't get it held up on, but generally that people get taken advantage of is, let's say, is sharing a password across multiple sites, right? So maybe I use this password, it's 123 password, and I use it on, let's say, something stupid like Reddit, right? And I don't really care about my Reddit account. It's like a throwaway account or something, and like I use 123 password on Reddit, and maybe that might not be an initial breach, but once someone breaches your Reddit, maybe Reddit had a data leak. They didn't. I want to say that. Let's say Reddit had supposedly, theoretically, had a data leak, and your password and username got leaked. What a threat actor will do, what attacker will do, is then take that username, take that exact password, and try on everything else, right? Try on bank services, like maybe at like Capital One, they try on Capital One, Goldman Sachs, whatever other bank is that, they might try on other things like Amazon, right? And see if you happen to use the same username and the same password. So something stupid that got breached, it might not have the best security. Reddit probably does, but let's say something that maybe it's a small form thing and didn't have the best security. You lost your account there, they will take that and try on everything that's big. So that's one of the things is you're only strong as your weakest link, and that's what happens there, right? The weakest link is that security of that tiny thing you use, and that can cause everything to go downhill. That's why you want to always have different passwords for everything, really. So that's a bit about password and security. So that's generally a really big thing in terms of person security. And the other really big thing, yes, okay. So this is generally the misconception is, this is a great question, Underdog, is how safe are password managers, since I guess they are still vulnerable to being hacked. They are. Don't get me wrong. They're definitely vulnerable to being hacked. But it's how password managers hold the data is what makes the difference. Password manager is not a text document. They should not be. If they are, then we have bigger problems at hand. They're generally not just text documents that just store your password in plain text. What they are is they're generally password manager is generally an application that has security measures in place, either encryption, encoding, and so on and so forth, that keeps it safe. So if a password manager gets hacked, all the attacker will be walking away with is a bunch of jumble up data that's either encoded, encrypted, or something that they would not be able to do anything with unless they have your master password, which is that one password we talked about that goes to your password manager. So what password manager actually store is all their encrypted information for that specific thing. And that's why they're vulnerable hack, but we're not less scared of it, right? I also talked about this earlier, is like for like ransomware attack, right? If you're afraid to put extra in data, is you can technically encrypt all your data. There's cost, right? And like most thing is the more simple something is, the lower the cost is. And then as soon as you make things more complex, you add complexity to it, we're increasing the level of cost of using things. And a lot of time in computer science or in cybersecurity in general is talking about this trade-off between cost and value. And encrypting things is a cost. There's a cost to it. There's technology cost, there's time cost, there's consistency cost. But to answer your question, are password managers safe? They are generally safe in the sense that they handle your data and your passwords in a secure manner. That even if they are breached and hacked, attacker walk away with it, they shouldn't be able to do anything. They should not be able to do anything with it unless they are able to also get your master password. And the reason you would use a password manager is you have one strong master password that you remember, that you keep in your head, that you should never be guessable. And we recommend a passphrase sometimes for that, or a mixture of both, a password and a passphrase. And as long as you keep that safe, no matter what the attacker steals, they would not be able to generally decode it. Because they can't decrypt it. So that the whole point of password manager is to abstract you having to memorize multiple strong passwords. You memorize one strong password that then essentially with that password, you can generate all your other passwords. I hope that kind of makes sense. Yeah, because there was one point where I was in the past, like way before when I was a lot younger, that I was also like a bit skeptical, which where the word is, of password manager is like, oh, but they can also just get hacked. But the whole point is they have procedures and tactics in place that if they get hacked, there's no actual damage or harm. But yeah, that's the idea of that. Let's see what else we want to cover. Another thing that is really important is what we call anti-malware or anti-malware. And as this might sound, this malware, again, is malicious software. Anti-malware is software that tries to prevent malicious software from landing on your computer. And what they do is companies use different tactics and procedure to try to identify malicious software before you can either download it, run it, or somewhere in between. Some of them are even able to detect websites. Like this website is known for malicious activity. They will tell you, hey, you can't go here, we shouldn't go here. And having this is really important because even if you have a firewall, having anti-malware is really important because there are times where something will breach a firewall. So like someone maybe are able to take advantage of faking as maybe something that's reputable and they can get through your firewall. And this is your security on site. And if you don't have it, I would highly recommend you get it. All Windows computer come with something called Windows Defender, which is, I can't spell Windows Defender, which realistically, if it's set up properly, it is a pretty good anti-malware, especially nowadays as we come to higher levels of threat because of our usage of technology. Windows have increased it. It is like the base level of malware. It's like the baseline of anti-malware. You have other pretty good ones, like Bitdefender. You have like Avast, AVG, Malwarebytes, and so on and so forth. I'm not recommending any of these. These are just ones out there that you can do more market research and determine what is good. But if you're on Windows computer, you generally come with Windows Defender. All you gotta really do is make sure at least it's enabled. If you don't want to spend money on additional anti-malware, the minimum thing you can really do is make sure the one that comes free if your operating system is enabled, which in most, if you have Windows computer, just Windows Defender, and make sure that's enabled and configured properly. It's really simple. Just look up Windows Security. I think that's what they renamed it to. Let me see. Windows. I think they just call it security. Yeah, they call it Windows Security. They used to be called Windows Defender, but people didn't feel comfortable just having that because it's like, oh yeah, what does that even really mean, right? Windows Security has the word security in it, right? Like, and people felt better about it. And if you open Windows Security, it doesn't just give you the Windows Defender part of it. Windows Security becomes like a suite of things that can be used to protect your personal computer. And most people does have Windows. Here, I'm gonna pull it up real quick. Give me like 1 second. Windows Security. Windows Security. So you can just look this up with hitting the Windows key and looking up Windows Security. I'm gonna grab a quick screen capture so everyone can see it. If you're not on Windows, you kind of still know what's going on. And I'm just need to be mindful of what I'm doing because I don't want to capture important information and leak it. So give me like 1 second to verify that this really shows nothing. Okay, cool. It does show. It doesn't show anything. So I will throw it on here as I give it one last check. No action needed. No action needed. No action needed. No action needed. Yeah, if this leaks something, I'm just stupid, but that's a different call. So this is what Windows Security looks like, right? You have it's generally so sophisticated nowadays. You can see that there is a part of Windows Security that takes care of viruses and threat, that takes care of account protection, that takes care of your firewall, right? So your router generally has a firewall. Then that's your first level firewall. Each general computer or system generally has their own firewall, and most operating systems are built in, right? So regardless if you're on a Linux machine, a Mac machine, a Windows machine, they have their internal firewall as well. So it's like a firewall on a firewall, and that is just double level protection. You have like app and browser control, device security, and this is all built into Windows Security. So if you're on Windows, one of the best things you can do is make sure your Windows Security is configured properly, and that all that happens. And if you want to spend a bit of money, you can also get additional anti-malware software that will most of the time take care of like a firewall standpoint or a virus scanning or a threat protection standpoint. What you can do is still enable Windows Security and have it run periodically because, like we say, each company determines threat differently or malicious software differently. And what you can do is have a paid service that they do this as a paid service as your main anti-malware application and firewall, but have Windows Security still on. Like I have another software, but you can see all my Windows Security is enabled because there's things on my Windows Security that does periodic scanning that checks it against it. You generally don't want to have multiple security application on your computer at once because they kind of try to fight to be control, right? It's like people, especially some security, if they're really bad and as in like they're not your best security applications, they might say other security application is malicious and so on and so forth because of the level of competition and so on and so like that. But this is the thing to keep in mind is you should always only have one active anti-malware on your computer at once. One active. When we say active, and there's different passive anti-virus and anti-malware, and there's active anti-malware and anti-virus. And I mean passive. So active one is the one that's currently handling your firewall, your real-time scanning, your active scanning, your threat protection. That's your active one. Well, your passive one is, for example, in my case, is I have an active one and I have a passive one. My Windows Security is my passive one that does like periodic scanning, just check against additional databases. That is periodic scanning on different things. And so my recommendation is if you have a Windows machine and you don't have anti-malware, at least get your Windows Security up to date. Let's take a look at this chat. This is what happens when you work in security. You check everything over and over again. The paranoia is zero. This is 100% true. I can guarantee that. I do things over and over. I'm probably one of the most paranoid coaches that stream. And our streaming is already pretty out of my field. But yeah, like I have a lot of safe measures in place. Even when I do development stream, you can see some coaches really aren't paranoid and don't really care. And like when they stream, they just stream you their desktop. You're never seeing my desktop. You might have in the past a bit. I've built in procedures, especially as I realized different things. So like I used to maybe like share a screen. Now I only share like isolated instances of my desktop machine because I did have a few cases where it's like nothing major because I have a lot of procedures and protocols in place that will prevent like major leaks while I'm on stream. But there might be a minor thing like maybe, oh, I didn't realize Windows auto-filled one thing and like I might have like leaked my email personally in the past. I got those all scrubbed, so don't even try. But there might be small things like that, nothing major, because I have a lot of products. But like even that, I built in more procedures now because we generally like to keep these recordings up, and sometimes I have to go through and like edit it out and so on and so forth, which is a lot of work for no reason. But yeah, and then I didn't forget. I know there's probably gonna be a lot of Apple and Mac users out here and might be watching the stream, and it's a pretty common, popular development computer. And for you guys, you might see that there might not be as much anti-malware, antivirus application for you, and the reason being is people who write these, it takes time, right? Again, malware is just malicious code, and it takes time to write malicious code, especially as measures like these, like anti-malware and virus grow, is that there's now a higher cost. The whole point of antivirus, anti-malware is to increase the threshold of cost for someone to be able to do things like try to steal information or hack your computer, right? And the reason why you generally don't see antivirus and anti-malware exist for Apple is one, Apple is not an open source thing. It's not a really public thing. Their code base is really locked down. Their operating system is really locked down. So like it's harder to get vulnerabilities with something that's so closed off and isolated. Also on top of that, Apple makes up such a small percentage of high value targets for it to be beneficial for someone to write, because Apples are generally, their operating system is completely different. So the malicious software needs to be written specifically to tailor towards Apple, including it could be its architectural of the machine, it could be the operating system. Apple is so different enough that it's generally not worth a malware attacker or a malicious code writer to write programs that only target Apple machines because there's so little of them. Number one, they make up such a small majority of high value targets. And number two, if you think about any company you ever go to, their servers are not running Apple generally. They're generally on either some sort of Linux instance, there's some sort of Windows instance, and their common day computer generally some sort of Windows, because if we take Apple out of the equation, your two operating system that is some sort of Unix Linux machine or a Windows machine. And most users are more comfortable Windows machine than a Linux Unix machine. And what that means is Windows becomes the general workstation, and that means it has the highest attack surface because there's so much of it, especially in like high value targets, that Windows is what you're going to have to be more aware of when we talk about anti-malware virus and anti-malware or just malicious software, and make sure that you have those configured and keeping malicious software out. I'd said that in such a weird way. It's because writing a malicious software for Windows has such more value to me as an attacker than writing one for Linux or writing one for Apple. And that's why Apple really prides themselves on security. It's not really that they are the most secure thing out there. It's just that they're generally not worth the effort to be put in, so they are generally a more secure operating system. They definitely have things going for them as well as certain things that are in Apple, but this is one of the reasons why you don't see antivirus or things written for Apple, because one, they have their operating system on such lockdown. It's impossible for the companies to write programs that are like antivirus, anti-malware, and two, it also deters malicious code writers to write it for us. They're just not valuable. Like if I spent time writing a program, I want to make millions, not $2. But yeah, that is the idea of antivirus software, anti-malware software on like Apple-based products and so on and so forth. And with that, I actually want to take a break and see if there's any questions from chat about anything. We can continue to talk about topics, but that really marks the end of our fundamentals to digital protection as well as Cybersecurity 101. I really want to take questions and really address any concerns. We talked about really two of the main ways of protecting yourself. One is to make sure your firewall and your computer is configured properly with some sort of anti-malware or antivirus. Is to also make sure you have strong password across the board. And if those two really things knocked out, you're pretty well off in terms of security and making sure you're protected. Is there any question I can address from chat? Oh, also just being aware for like the whole phishing thing. Those are really like the three biggest things that you really can have in your back pocket. There's other things we can definitely talk about in terms of personal security, but in terms of basics and fun cybersecurity 101, in terms of foundation of digital protection, that's a lot of it. But open to any questions from chat. Anything you have question about, concerns, so on and so forth. You can air them out now. We'll get them addressed. No question from chat whatsoever. Everyone's a security expert here. Everyone knew everything coming in. No one learned anything new. Anyone learn anything new? Anything they thought was cool? Anything they thought was like, whoa, I did not know that. I'm glad I know that now. Anything? No? Okay. If that's it, I would say this really concludes our workshop on Cybersecurity 101, building foundations of digital protection. To keep yourself safe, just be vigilant when you're on the internet. I came in the stream late. That's okay. We can do a quick brief overview. I'm glad everything was good. So it's okay. If you're a bit late, we do have recording of the stream the second I go offline. If you're interested, you can definitely go watch a lot of topics we talked about. All we essentially did was talk about a lot of key topics in cybersecurity, as well as common threats to both a personal and company level. We also discussed a bit about personal security, how you can keep yourself safe through a few things, being vigilant, keeping up with antisocial engineering techniques or tactics, making sure your password and password account management is safe across the board. We also talked a bit about having proper defenses on your personal machines to keep yourself safe, like having anti-malware, anti-malicious. We defined a bit of terminology in cybersecurity, like advanced persistent threat. We also did talked about what actual malware is. It's just any sort of malicious code and so on and so forth. But feel free to check out the recording after this ends if you have any questions. But if you have any question you want to ask, any personal question you ever thought of, feel free to ask them now. But yeah, as last questions come in, I do want to say thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yes, it's definitely not the only thing, but if you think about it, a lot of things are pretty public information. That means with a bit of recon, it's pretty easy to impersonate someone, right? If I have your date of birth, it's okay. This is a bit of stretch. Hopefully, most places you are at, just having your birthday, and month is not enough. But it is a starting point, right? Because the worst thing they fail, nothing really happens. And they can play it off, right? It has to do with their level of social engineering ability, but it is definitely a really important arsenal when you give that away. Giving your, especially your full birth date is really bad. Giving even just your day and month is pretty bad already, because I can combine that with other information that may be public about you, right? So like maybe I can do some digging, figure out where you live. I can do some digging, maybe figure out who your friends are or XYZ. And it's just generally not a good combination. Some people use their birthday in their password, right? They might just use the day and month and so on and so forth. It's just a generally good thing is to keep that information more private to people you know. But no, it definitely giving just your day and month is not enough for someone to impersonate you. It will help someone impersonate you if they know what they're doing, if they have the charisma to do so, if they have their social engineering skills to do so, if they have the recon skill to gather a bit more information about you, right? Is really all that was. I don't want to scare you thinking giving your day and month is enough. It's not enough, but that with other things can be enough. Do I recommend having a VPN? In a degree, yes. I wouldn't say, again, we talked about the trade-off between value and cost, right? Generally, when you have a VPN, your cost is the speed and the performance of your network. And what I would say is I have a VPN. I think having VPN is worth it. And the place it being worth it is in the idea or in the sense that there are times when you're on public network that even though everything is secure and sure, if it's really public, anyone can be on there trying to listen or get information or try to capture things across the network. That's when a VPN is really useful, because a VPN generates a secure connection from point A to point B, and networks all traffic through that connection before it actually goes out to anything else. But with that, you have the cost of increasing your latency and decreasing your speed, because there's an additional step it's going through, and generally most VPNs can handle a high level of speed. I recommend having a VPN. I do not recommend having it on all the time, like 24/7. I do recommend having it for, let's say, when you're going to a cafe, if you're ever just traveling, staying at a hotel, kick on that VPN. It's definitely the safer things to do. If you're at an airport, kick on that VPN. If you're at a place that you don't trust it has more public Wi-Fi, kick on that VPN. If you don't want your internet service provider, or if you're at school and you don't want some sort of internet service provider to keep track of your browsing history, kick on your VPN. Because what that happens is all they will see is maybe at most you connected to that VPN, and all the data, your personal data, will be routed through the VPN. How much you should be spending on it and all that stuff is a whole different story. Well, what are good providers are a whole different story. And I would heavily suggest you, if you're looking at VPN, is making sure that their privacy policy is in line of what you're looking for. But the whole point of VPN is it's important to have one. I do not recommend having it on 24/7. Like if you're at home and you don't trust your home provider, you don't trust them, we have a bigger problem to deal with than having a VPN. But VPNs are really beneficial when you're on unsecure network or networks you do not trust. Any other burning questions we can address from chat? If not, I'm going to do my closing, as if there's no question, feel free to drop it. Do not think anything. But yes, this really concludes the content part of our Cybersecurity 101, building a foundation for digital protection for our Global Hacker Security Week. Yes, for sure. I'm really glad people enjoyed and learned a lot. I do want to say, do stick around though, because we have Abdullah running a No Light event that's happening in approximately 40 minutes from now. So please do stick around if you enjoy some No Light. If that is everything, I hope everyone have a wonderful rest of your night. If you have any questions, feel free to ever also reach out, connect, do whatever you want, network, so on and so forth. But do stick around for our next section, and make sure everyone gets some rest, especially if it's late where you are at. And if you're interested, my next section, which will actually be tomorrow, I have a session tomorrow at, let me check the time. Tomorrow at 19 p.m. EST, or 19 o'clock EST, or 7 p.m. EST, Eastern Standard Time, or Eastern Time in general, where we'll be going over Malware 101, which is a bigger, deeper dive into malicious software 101. So like we briefed over a lot of it and a big general idea of malware. We'll be covering a bit of that. So if you can't come today, you might see some repeat tomorrow on the general of malware, but then we're going to dive really deep into each different type of malware and generally maybe ways to identify them, or so on and so forth. But with that, I do wish everyone have a wonderful rest of your nights. Please enjoy and hit me up if you have any questions. But with that, good night, everyone. Take care.